Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Borror.
And Bill, for a brief moment, the center of the universe shifts from Carmel, Indiana, over to Rome. We have a new pope. You are in Rome right now.
I'm in Rome. I'm about 10 minutes from where it all happened. Yeah.
Several people, it's like Star Wars. They've said, actually, I've heard repeatedly, when Darth Vader says, I sense a disturbance in the force. I hear that they're reporting that when you touch down, that they sense some disturbance, Bill, in the force. Bring it, that's yeah. So you're there. Were you in the square? Did you do any participation?
Thought about going up to the square, but by the time we would have done it, we would have been so far away, we'd just seen a speck. So we were there at the Basilica today. Matter of fact, we were probably only a matter of a wall, but there was a wall between us and the new Pope Leo XIV. He was celebrating mass in the Sistine Chapel, so we were not able to get into the Sistine Chapel. But a lot of energy, man. People were very excited. People were surprised. They still have people. It was kind of like the Super Bowl. They had a wall of press, like all these kind of set up local, or not local, but satellite access, or however they do it now. And there was press. The press was still all broadcasting.
I will tell you who was not surprised.
Yeah,
Steve Bannon. It was the only person. He was talking about this a week ago. Now, I don't know what your media diet was like with the run up to the conclave, but I did not hear Bobby Prevost's name anywhere mentioned as a serious candidate.
Well, I thought he was. I mean, he was mentioned as a dark horse when they talked about possible Americans. I did.
Where did you read that or hear that?
Because Reuters or The Economist? I don't remember. It was. It was not like the New York Times, or wasn't it? It was not. I think it was a European based.
Yeah, it was not. It was. He was not. He was not in most of the literature, especially by people that cover the beat heavily, the Vatican, which makes you wonder what is closer to reality, conclave or all the thousands of words that were spilled up to this, right? Because this was not. He was not a serious contender.
Well, but
and not only, but what's interesting is not only what was he not someone that was lauded as a serious possibility, but so quickly. Now, somebody, it's a fast conclave as well.
Which means that the press, the people, the prognosticators didn't know what they were talking about. I mean, I think, first of all, he is in charge of reviewing Francis put him in charge of reviewing every bishop candidate in the world. Okay, it's a pretty important position. Francis and him had a 20-year relationship that went back to when they were both in South America. Matter of fact, Francis knew him before he was a bishop. So I think the people that. So I think he certainly, obviously, being from the United States is something that most people never thought we were going to get.
I thought I would never see it in my life, an American.
But if
Pope.
you're going to have an American, he checks all the boxes. First of all, he's a dual citizen in Peru. And he spent most of his pastoral life in Peru. He is a scholar, graduate, an Augustinian.
Scholar of canon law.
You can never have too many Augustinians in positions of power.
I don't know about canon law though. What did they say? What did they say when Augustine was coming to one of the ecumenical conferences? Somebody remarked whether it was, that's all we need is another North African lawyer here.
Right.
Or something to that effect.
I think, one of the things in retrospect, I guess the Italian that a lot of people are talking about, who was, I guess, the number 2 position, kind of Secretary of State or whatever, he had no pastoral experience. So I think the fact is this is a man who's been a pastor. He's again, and apparently his temperament, what everyone says, he's a gentle soul. Um, but it does feel like he certainly was not a move away from Francis. I think he has a different temperament, certainly. But he's young too, 69. So that could be, we're looking at potential, 20
And
years.
also a White Sox fan. Don't you think patience is a pastoral patience? I mean, don't you think at Rate Field, the home field, of course, of the White Sox, you could emblazon Dante's words, abandon hope, all ye who enter here. And yet,
Well,
here's a man who, as the scripture says, for decades has hoped against hope.
well, right. I mean, this is one of Nietzsche's argument against Christianity, right? Support for the poor and the weak, right? But but he's a Villanova fan, Villanova basketball fan, so he's
Hey,
got.
big for Philadelphia, Villanova. We love this. It's. By the way, did you hear what Trump said in response?
No, I've fortunately not. He does not dominate. He shows up over here, but he does not
Oh,
dominate
he
the.
shows up.
He doesn't dominate
I'm
the.
very pleased that the Vatican took my advice and hired one of our excellent bishops. America has great bishops. Looking forward to his help.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure he's going to be upset.
America, that's just such a great line. America has great bishops. We've got, I mean, the bishops look, I mean, when they get together, they say that I'm making America satanic again. But I mean, we love our bishops. Our bishops, I mean, they dress a little effeminate. So did the founding fathers, a little gay. But, I mean, just so there,
Yeah, what a piece of work. Yeah, I mean, whether it was from his site, where he certainly he too echoed Francis' critique of J.D. Vance's venture into
the Grim
reinterpretation.
Reaper, who I will forever blame for killing Pope Francis.
uh,
Don't fear the Reaper. Yeah, tell that to Francis.
well, so how's it playing in America?
Well, Bill, let me tell you how it's playing. As I take a sip of my Coke Zero, I toast this. I toast RFK. Suck it, Bobby. You can take this Coke Zero out of my cold, dead hand, Bob. That's what I think of that stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, look, I think it's a shocker, right? In some sense, it's a dark horse. It's somebody that was, I mean, certainly there's Philadelphians are pretty happy. We got somebody who, for those of you who don't know Philadelphia, our new area code, one of our newest, it's several years back was 267. So
right.
people are now saying the 267th Pope knows the 267 because
Nice.
I talked with a woman today at an appointment who her grandfather went to school with Bobby with when he was a math major, and she showed me a picture he had texted both of their pictures in the Villanova yearbook that year. He was so that's interesting, very very cool that we have some Philadelphia roots. We have an Augustinian,
Yeah, yeah.
which is quite interesting. And so I don't know historically how often this has happened, but two non-diocesan bishops in a row. I mean, two members of religious orders, not secular priests, but religious people from religion. But you asked how it's playing in America. I mean, how it's playing in Philly, how it's playing in America.
But
There's chatter. It's only been a day, or it's only been like a day, but
they were,
I've heard several interviews, and
yeah, they
but
were,
people
they
are
were,
waiting for us to talk. Look, do you know how many people have said all throughout the country, "Where's Bill?" We have to raise him. He's actually in the center of the action.
yeah, yeah, over here, trying to to pray for our Catholic brothers and sisters, and yeah, I like the choice. A lot of different reasons, but I do think too. But they were members of an order, but they also pastored. They also had parishes because Leo uh, 14th, he was a bishop he was a parish. I think he was working in a parish before he uh, he was bishop, before he was a cardinal, as well as being head of the Augustinian order, because he was a mission pastor. So yeah, which is I think I think I sent you the quote from his first mass, which I think is very encouraging. Feels people are speculating why did he take the name Leo, and I've heard people say, well, both a defender of traditional Catholic orthodoxy, but also strong social.
I was thinking Leo X, who of course framed his former lover, but
there was some bad Leos between Leo the First.
hey, yeah.
There's Leo the First. I actually saw a painting in the Vatican museum today of Leo the First with only a cross confronting Attila the Hun, and Attila the Hun being terrified and saying, "We won't sack Rome." Don't know if that's how it happened, but that's how it was presented, right?
Well, and Leo is one of the only two popes, I think, right, who are doctors of the church.
Yes, because of his tone, because of his involvement in the Christological controversy.
And Leo, we're talking, of course, Leo the Great, a 5th century, the first pope, and again, one of the greats, literally the great. Yeah. And Leo X is somebody with checkered history, especially for Protestants.
But Leo XIII was a person who many think was one of the architects of modern Catholic
social teaching.
Yeah. So
certainly protecting the dignity of the worker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, and Leo the 13th was the oldest, was the first pope ever videoed. I saw a video of it. Like in the 1890s, they actually had motion picture. You can actually see
him.
Video of the and not he's one of the more svelte popes. I mean, the past couple ones have been a little more rotund at the end of their lives, and this is certainly not the case for that Leo. He looked like he was cutting carbs.
Yeah, well, they were also, they're old men with a lot of infirmities. So, anyway, yeah. So he's a, he's younger than our current president and our previous president by a decade, and he certainly seems in good shape. And
a registered Republican.
All right, there we go. I did not.
So there you go. He's part of the GOP. But a registered Republican who has been very outspoken about the policies of this administration towards immigration, and so he is a guy who, and again, has a deep sympathy, almost like someone like De Las Casas or somebody with indigenous Americans. I mean, has that.
It was fun. Yeah, I did see a video of his. Of the Peruvian town he served. They were, he's around, and he did not. He spoke Latin, Italian, and Spanish in his opening address that we saw last night. Now, apparently, he spoke a couple lines of English in the mass today. But so I think it'll be an interesting. I actually. You never know, right? No one knew what John Paul II was going to be. I think
I saw a video of John Paul II the other day in a batting cage. Now, this guy is Polish, so growing up, so I'm assuming there was not a lot of baseball, or even stickball or anything like that being played in his formative years. This guy he had a good cut. I mean, he was making solid contact. It looked like he was hitting line drives.
I don't remember. He was a relatively young man when he
And
became
he was a
relative.
skier too. He was
Yeah,
an
that's
avid
right.
skier.
I had a person in my parish in Media who was baptized by him. No, served his first communion by him. He was Polish, and he was he was a family friend. Matter of fact, there were stories of this man's father. He was an older man, and the Pope were part of the underground. They were part of the Pope was involved in the resistance indirectly, and they they were connected
That's
in
what they
creating.
say about you, Bill. Our conservative listeners, they say we're suspicious of Bill Borror, who's part of the Vermont resistance indirectly.
I would be, you know what, if I I'm humbled to be associated with resistance fighters like John Paul II. I'll take that anytime. Yeah,
I heard
and
a great story about John Paul once. I was listening to some podcast. I forget how I found this, or maybe it was on EWTN or something. But this guy who is, I don't know if he currently is, but at the time he was the head of the board that manages the Swiss Guard, right? Which is
oh yeah,
guards the
yeah,
Pope, of course. And that is, that's part of like the Swiss Special Forces, or whatever.
right.
And he kind of was this guy who was trying to find himself as a younger guy and just haphazardly signed up to do this guard duty and found the Lord in that day. He was guarding John Paul, and his first Christmas away from home, he's welling up in tears. And John Paul II ministered to him and just said, what, how are you? Gave him his rosary and had this deep relationship with this guy and led him to a personal relationship with the Lord. This guy who was baptized Catholic but didn't mean much to him. And he said, when I left, John Paul pointed his finger at me. He said, "No, you found Christ here. Now take him to the world." And
Yeah,
this guy's been a real witness for Christ. Bill, you mentioned the first sermon here, the first homily
right,
that Robert gave as Leo the 14th.
right.
And I just wanted to read one passage where I thought it was very interesting. He talked about two ways that you could answer this question, who do you say that I am?
Hmm.
He says, first, there is the world's response. Matthew tells us that this conversation between Jesus and his disciples takes place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, filled with luxurious palaces. I almost went into Trump right there. Beautiful
Right.
town. It's just luxurious palaces right by Gaza.
It was actually not right by God.
I know
Yeah,
it's not.
it's where
But
the
Trump could say right by Gaza. I mean, that would,
well, Senior Agrippa.
and Caesarea Philippi next to Greenland, filled with luxurious palaces, set in a magnificent natural landscape at the foot of Mount Hermon, but also a place of cruel power plays, and the scene of betrayals and infidelity. This
Right.
setting speaks to us of a world that considers Jesus a completely insignificant person, at best someone with an unusual and striking way of speaking and acting. And so, once his presence becomes irksome because of his demands for honesty and his stern moral requirements, the world will not hesitate to reject and eliminate him. Then there is the other possible response to Jesus' question, that of ordinary people. For them, the Nazarene is not a charlatan, but an upright man, one who has courage, who speaks well and says the right things, like other great prophets in the history of Israel. That is why they follow him, at least for as long as they can do so without too much risk or inconvenience. Yet to them, he is only a man, and therefore, in times of danger during his passion, they too abandon him and depart disappointed. What is striking about these two attitudes is their relevance today. They embody notions that we could easily find on the lips of many men and women in our own time, even if, while essentially identical, they are exposed in different language. And he just talks about the struggles that we have in contextualizing the gospel today, that you have both among the powerful and the ordinary, different ways of being skeptical about the man from Nazareth. And I think that this was a really interesting
Yeah.
thing to expound on, that he sees this perennial question, who do you say that I am, as something that needs to be at the center of the church's reflection and proclamation, which I think is encouraging.
Very encouraging. You know, I went to an exhibit this afternoon in a church, but it's also like an art exhibition place. It's absolutely beautiful. This was a very interesting. It's probably the one thing from Rome I'm taking to. I'm going to be thinking about as much as anything else. Right, this exhibit of flowers, but the spirituality and you know and Catholic. It just was really interesting, and a lot of modern art. In this one gallery, you walk in, and it was 1,000 pieces, little um, iron cast, a forest scene, and you walk in, it was all black, and you look at it small, and it looked like a burned out. It looks, you know, it's kind of a commentary on you know, burned out forest from war or from the environmental disaster, whatever. Or it's just you look at it, it's the Black Woods. It's called, I think. Um, but you walk through the room and you turn around the other side, and it's all color. It's full. The other side of these little miniature cast iron little sculptures is beautiful colors. And so it's this you know, I mean, I actually went back. You still there? I went back
You
and
disappeared, Bill. What did you just do?
am I here now?
Oh, there your screen went black.
Uh, so I actually would go back and forth. And if you go from the color side to the dark side, you could see color all the way till you got the other way. If you go from the dark, you couldn't see the color until you got to the other side. And so I think there's a lot, you and I have been certainly talking a lot about the darkness that is infused in so much of what's going on in our world. But I think our Roman brothers and sisters and the cardinals, um, I think maybe made a very hopeful choice. And I think certainly Francis modeled a different kind of way to think about power and leadership. And the heir of Peter now, the man who walks in the shoes of the fisherman, um, you know, might all the indications is he's going to carry on that legacy as well and create his own. And I'm staying actually in the Waldensian seminary, uh, the apartments of the Waldensian seminary, which is this amazing building here in Rome, and a handful
You're
of
not
the
going to find a Jansenist seminary there, that's for sure.
but a bunch of the Waldensian students, the German students here in Italian as well, and these Protestants, this horribly persecuted minority that had to be in underground caves, proto-Protestant group. For those of you who may not know,
That sounds fantastic to me. An underground cave. If you find one of those for me, let me know. I'll move the whole setup over there.
They're up there as museums anyway. But they were excited, and they went and they came back, and they were so excited. They went and came back, and so to me, that is a remarkable, hopeful thing. Uh, that they wanted to be part of history, but they too were excited about this. So there are times when Christianity and Christendom can come together, and there are moments that we are reminded. And when someone as influential as now Pope Leo XIV reminds us the best of who we can be and who we are, and to speak into this dark world, as he talked about, and a quote from the sermon today as well. That to me brings the color into that the color side of the darkness, and that's where I want to be right now.
You know, he talked in that sermon about the dangers of practical atheism, right? Or even, you know, he says, you know, that you see in both a believer and non-believer like this practical atheism in common, this ability to walk through the world as though God's not a really functional or impending reality. So I've been reading Richard Rohr lately. This great book called Breathing Underwater, and he has this great phrase. He has this great passage about this kind of unbelief. It says the innocuous mental belief systems of much religion are probably the major cause of atheism in the world today. Because people see that they have not generally created people who are more strong, caring, or creative than other groups, and often a lot worse. I wish I did not have to say that, but religion either produces the very best people or the very worst. Jesus makes this point in many settings and stories. Mere mental belief systems split people apart, where actual faith puts all our parts, body, head, heart, on notice and on call, and offers us a new broadband station with full surround sound instead of a static filled monotone. Honestly, it takes major surgery and much of one's life to get head, heart, and body to put down their defenses, their false programs for happiness, and their many forms of resistance to what is right in front of them. This is the meat and the muscle of the whole conversion process.
Very powerful. You know, it struck me as you were reading that too, a side thought that if Richard Rohr, who, you know, he pushes the limits of Catholicism, but he is a Franciscan, that if Richard Rohr and Steve Bannon were both saying prayers, they both prayed for the well-being of the Holy Father.
Yeah, amen to that.
And
And so do we. So do we.
Yeah, so do we. All right. Good talking to you, my friend.
Good talking to you, and everybody pray for Bill's safe travels back, because we all know the beat goes on.
Peace, everyone.